A new study has just come out showing that intermittent fasting might actually ruin fertility in individuals. So, if you are an expecting parent, or maybe you want to have a child in the future and you currently do intermittent fasting, make sure you stay all the way until the end of this video because we're going to talk about the new study and how it could affect you as a parent or an expecting parent, of course. So go ahead, drop a like, and we're going to go ahead and dive right in. This was a crazy study. And before we actually get into the study, though, I do want to kind of reiterate what intermittent fasting actually is because it gives us a framework of what the study was really about. So intermittent fasting is essentially where you do not eat a certain portion of the day. And this is usually beyond bedtime. So for most individuals, when you are doing intermittent fasting, this usually will involve you skipping your breakfast or skipping your dinner. A lot of people like skipping their breakfast in the morning just because it works really well for them. And essentially because of this, you're going to be fasting intermittently, right? A little bit beyond what you would normally not eat when you are just going to bed. So for example, in the morning, somebody might skip breakfast and maybe they won't start eating their first meal until about, let's say noon, for example. So they're waiting literally a few hours after they wake up before they even touch anything. So let's say the night before they stopped eating at 8 p.m. So their feeding window or their fasting window is from 12 to 8, an 8-hour feeding window, meaning that they are fasting essentially for 16 hours of the day. Some people like doing this at dinner time, so they'll maybe stop eating at 4 p.m. and they'll actually start eating again at 8 a.m. the next morning. It would still be a 8-hour window. And again, for a lot of individuals, they like this because it really shrinks down the time of day, obviously, that they are going to be eating. And this can usually lead to a lot of weight loss. And usually for individuals, there isn't really much concern in overall health issues, but we are going to touch on that study in just a second and look at how it might be affecting fertility in individuals. But that's why a lot of people like to do it. It shrinks your overall calorie budget down quite a bit, and for a lot of individuals leads to very, very good weight loss. So that's what intermittent fasting is. You can try it out for yourself, but you might not want to just quite yet because we're going to talk about this new fasting study. So you might be saying, okay, like that's great, you know, I can use intermittent fasting for weight loss, but what does this study say on fertility? So this study was done in zebrafish, and that should be a first kind of, I wouldn't say red flag, but an interesting thing to note. So I got a picture here of zebrafish, and essentially what they did, they had one control group of zebrafish, and they had another group of zebrafish where they actually put them through time-restricted feeding or intermittent fasting. So one group was basically allowed to have their normal diet. They could eat whenever they want. They didn't have any restrictions at all. And then the other group of zebrafish actually had basically their food cage kind of cut off during a certain portion of the day. I don't think it noted in the study exactly what time of day. It doesn't matter though, particularly, at least, you know, when we're talking about this, because a portion of the day consistently was taken out where they did not have free reign on food. And this compared very drastically compared to basically what they were eating beforehand, which they could literally eat whatever, right? So in this study, this is the really interesting part. They found that some of the zebrafish in the group that did time-restricted feeding actually had decreased sperm quality if it was a male and decreased egg quality if it was a female. So that should be something that you should really, really interesting stuff here. But, you know, we do need to talk about, of course, the elephant in the room here. And not necessarily an elephant, but the parent in the room or the human in the room. So what is really the application to humans, right? Okay, zebrafish, they did some time restricted eating, some intermittent fasting. Does this really matter for humans? And the first thing I want to say when looking at any study done in animals and trying to make comparisons on humans is that we need to take it with a big grain of salt, especially when it comes to what type of animals were used in the study. Now, a lot of times in our day-to-day studies and science experiments, they're usually done in mice, and mice, when it comes to biological, not differences, but similarities, actually are fairly similar. I'm not going to say it's exactly the same, but mice are very cheap, they're very easy to get, and they have a sort of similar biology to humans. Again, this is not perfect. Not nearly as perfect as if we would use like a monkey, for example, because their biology is very similar to humans, but for the most part, that's with mice. So zebrafish, this is a very, very different biology. So that's the first thing I want you to consider is anytime you're using any animal for a human result, you just need to think about it should still be done in humans. This still needs to have some testing done in humans because it's kind of a good springboard. It's a good idea point, but it doesn't really give you exact, clinical trials. And that's kind of the gold standard. We need double-blind placebo, clinical trials. These are the types of things which can lead to good results. So if you are trying to have a kid, or if you are going to have a kid in the future, I really wouldn't worry about this study. I think it is interesting. It should be something to maybe keep track of over time, but in the end, I wouldn't stress on it too much. So go ahead and give this video a like if you learned something new. Subscribe to the channel. We help individuals of all abilities inside the gym and become healthier in life. And you might want to check out this other video I'm going to link right here. That's actually going to talk about how intermittent fasting might not be helpful for weight loss. And it's another interesting study too that we looked at as well. So go ahead and check that video out. We'll see you in the next time.